What's up, guys? It's Chase
and Noah
with Producer Bros, and today we're doing our first installment of Song Flip, yo!
Producer Bros! Producer Bros!
So we flipped a song from our friends up in a thing called Gravity.
Yeah, A Thing Called Gravity. Their first hit single, Lonely. It's a phenomenal song. The composition on it was pretty on point, and we really liked the song and wanted to see what we could do with it.
Right, so our friend Cameron Robb is in the band. Shout out to Cam. We heard the song and we thought that there was just really great bones to it. So we wanted to make it our first installment, really give us this idea to just beef up some tracks, take some amateur artists or maybe artists that have been musicians for a long time but are just getting into the gig of production and see if we can increase their production value. So let's hop right into it.
Hey yo, it's Song Flip Day, and I'm here to say we gonna flip that song until we blue in the face. Yo, Song Flip!
Song Flip!
Hey, Song Flip!
Song Flip!
Alright, so hopping right in here, we got our project file open. So what we did was we went ahead and built the song from the ground up. We're going to do this installment in 3 parts. We're going to start by talking about the compositional changes that we made, anything that we made to the actual structure of the song. And then we'll move on to talking about maybe any effects that we applied. And then we'll move on to really the post-production of it all and mixing and mastering. So let's hop right in. Alright, so the first thing that we really edited compositionally was the intro. So I think that we noticed that the intro was a little bit drug out. I believe in the original recording there were 2 bars of a riser and then 2 bars of just strumming this open chord for an introduction before the vocals came in. So I'll give you guys a listen to what that sounded like in the original take.
People like to talk too much.
Alright, so we just really felt that there wasn't a lot of dynamicism there. It wasn't really anything ear-catching. And I don't think it was really introducing any melody that needed to be picked out. It wasn't really introducing a structure to the song. So what we did was we just cut the riser back to 1 bar and then straight into the vocals. And I think it really added up just a punch to the beginning of the track. So we'll show you what that sounds like.
People like to talk too much, but do they ever listen, though, to voices outside of their own brain, disdain causing separation pains?
Noah, any comments on that?
I don't think so. Pretty much hit the nail on the head. I again just agree that there wasn't anything there that was specifically ear-catching, anything that really stood out to help build the intro to the song, and kind of just jumping straight into the vocals, because the vocals were more ear-catching. It just kind of got you straight into the song, get your ears already going, get you ready to listen right off the bat.
The next thing might have been... Yeah, so while we were recording, Noah had just been muting some things and soloing some things while he was mixing, and I kind of had this moment where I heard this brief little cool thing, and so I just cut a little portion out, a little pocket out of the guitar bus here, and the not the vocal bus, sorry, out of the guitar bus here, and the rhythm guitar part, and it sounded a little bit like this from the chorus.
Sometimes it's lonely, sometimes I didn't get lonely, sometimes and baby if only you knew, yeah baby if only.
Yeah, so I just thought that little pause added a little bit of dynamicism there, differentiated it from the original chorus, and just gave us somewhere to go with it. I really mixed up the song just a little bit. It was just a little minor touch. The only thing that other thing that we really edited in the composition of the song, for one, on the guitar solo here. By the way, huge props to the lead guitarist. This is a very well written solo, and by that I mean I tried to smash my guitar against the wall 4 or 5 times trying to play it.
No! 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 No!
But I got it out. But I did, I did miss. There was some of it was kind of muddy and hard to hear, not because you didn't play it well, just because of the recording. And these last few notes here, I couldn't hear very well, so I just took this little 6-tuplet thing that you did here, and added it to the end, copied it to the end as well.
I didn't get lonely.
I believe in the original take you were scaling up there, but I just couldn't pick out the individual notes, so that's just what I ended up doing. And then we ended up adding a breakdown for a little more diversity here at the very end of the song. So it just goes from quarter beats on the kick drum to whole notes on the kick drum, and I think
kept keeping the chorus going with the vocals, and then going back to the original rhythm of the first verse with the lead guitar and rhythm guitar.
Right. So I'll go ahead and show you what that sounds like.
Sometimes I didn't get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew. Yeah, baby, if only you knew.
And compositionally, that was another change that we made. So you guys kind of just let the song ring out. And I ended up just doing a slide on the guitar here and the bass. I just did a slide down the fretboard and then landed on the root chord there, the root power chord, and ended it. Honestly, I don't think that was a big improvement. I think that you guys did a really good job at ending the song as well. It was just something different.
Our take on it, something that we probably would have done a little differently.
Yeah, and also, to be honest, it's probably 4 or 5 in the morning by the time I did that, so I kind of just was done recording at that point. Yeah, so I'd say that's all we really changed compositionally about the song, so we're going to go ahead and move over to the next portion. Alright, drums. So as far as the drums go, we MIDI mapped all the drums out. We used a SoCal Plus producer kit in Logic Pro. I think we literally just tried to match what you were doing on the kit exactly. Or you probably MIDI mapped these drums as well, Cam, is my guess. Let's take a listen to the original real quick. Most of the verses sounded like that same little loop, so we kind of duplicated that. Oh, sorry. What did I do? There we go.
People like to talk too much, but do they ever listen? No.
I really think the biggest difference in the drums that with what we did was the post-production. I think your guys' MIDI mapping was pretty on point. Cam, you're a pretty good drum player. I think you did a phenomenal job with that. I think it was mostly just the mixing and mastering half of it that the drums were lacking in. And I actually think in our discussions about this song, I think the number one problem was that next to nothing was compressed, and then the way that the song was leveled, it seemed like the guitar ended up being pushed far above the rest of the instruments in the song, and so everything else just kind of washed out. I mean, your take on that?
All in all, the guitar, like you said, was just pushed too much, and it caused everything else to kind of be in the background. So either if you brought everything else up or brought the guitar back, it kind of would have balanced the entire mix out, even if you didn't get into some more in-depth post-production with compression and saturation and stuff like that. Even if it would have just been the guitar being brought back, it would have changed the mix drastically. But for the most part, it was just the post-production and everything that we really changed in the song for the most part.
Right. So if you look at the kick in and out here, both of them are boosted. It looks like an EQ right around the 50 to 100 range.
In the original track before we exported it, we did.
So we bounced this in place, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So every time, because we're cheap, we have a demo version of Guitar Rig that we use for all of our guitar amps and bass amps. We have to export it and bounce it in place anytime we want to keep the audio and keep the preset that we used. So we dropped the EQ out of the 10 or the 50 hertz to 100 hertz area specifically to allow that kick to punch through. So as he's showing on the screen, that's kind of what we did with the bass initially to kind of get it to punch through. You don't see it in this EQ because again we had to bounce it in place, but that's what we did initially.
Yep. So we really created a pocket for the kick there to really punch through the mix. The snare, you can see how we EQ'd this here. I think tried to pull a lot of the punch out of the snare around the 200 hertz range, and then around the 5K was where more of the snap came from.
Brightened it up.
Yeah, brightened it up, and then we just did a high cut to cut out some of the maybe excess white noise on the top end of the snare. And then
snare bottom wasn't a whole lot, just compressing to get the actual snare sounds out of it.
The rattle.
Other than that, I mean, the EQ didn't need changed a whole lot.
So the hi-hats here, we just really brightened up on the high end to get the shine out of them, and I believe we did the same thing with the overheads, which is where all the crashes are going to come from. And then one of the biggest things for this song was production on the toms, because toms by nature are very warm, and a lot of the verses were extremely tom heavy, especially low toms. And so in the original mix, I felt like just the low end or the mid range of the toms weren't really pushing through. And I think that's one of the biggest adjustments that we made is on the lower mid range, on this 100 to 200 range, right above where the bass and the kick would be coming in. You know, because the bass would be coming in this, sub 50 range, and then the kick would come in like 75 range, and then you would have your toms right here in the 100 to 200 hertz range. That really warmed them up, and of course we have them offset a little bit depending on if it was a high tom or a low tom. And how it was tuned.
Yep, and you see the low tom is covering even more of those lower frequencies.
But again, I'll play that back, and you can hear if I solo out the kit and I were to go through and turn off the EQ on those items, and I would play that back.
And if I just go in and slowly and compression as well is extremely important in this case scenario.
Like I said, I think compression was one of the number one things you were missing. But that really, really helped with the verses to get some of the rhythmic stuff tightened up. So as far as drums go, I think that's pretty much about the gist of what we did. There might be some things that we mapped a little bit differently than you did, but nothing drastic.
Yeah, other than that, where he cut out the all the instruments and brought it back in with that drum fill, most of the drums stayed just about the same. Like you said, Cam, you're a great drummer. I like what you did with the song. You kept it simple, but still showcased some of your talent in it, and I think that was cool.
Yep, phenomenal job on the drums, guys. And with that, we're going to move on to guitar.
It's a pity though. I thought I could share my artistic side with you.
So for guitar, we'll flash some clips of the recording process, but I used my Epiphone Les Paul to record. I really like the way the pickups sound, and especially for this pop-punk kind of stuff, it really gives me a warm mid-range for this rhythm guitar type stuff. I think the guitar, I mean, you guys are all really talented musicians, and like I said, that's one of the reasons we picked this song to start with, because the bones of the song, the composition was really good. It was just some of the production stuff that was muddied up, and so one thing that I think we did with guitar that was a little bit different with the rhythm guitar, like I said, we would have EQ'd this before we
You can actually bring up the OG guitar track to see what we did to it.
Oh yeah, that's right. So here's the original guitar track. So you can see how we had that EQ'd. So we had brought up the just up above the post 200 hertz range.
And as you can see, we didn't raise it too much around that snare area, just above the snare. So the snare still cuts through with a punch, but it also warms up the guitar.
Right, in the low cut there to really bring out the muddier regions of the guitar, especially since I believe I was recording this with the neck pickup, and so anything below that frequency range is really just going to muddy up your mix.
And leave room for bass if you cut it out.
100%, yep. I think the lower mids are really important in this type of track, because as you'll notice if I play this back in... hold up. If I play this back right at the chorus, I think that was one of the shining moments of the final track that we came up with, was as soon as the chorus comes in, there's really just this wall of sound, and I believe that's really attributable to boosting that lower mid-range in the guitar, in the rhythm guitar, as well as the 2K to 5K range. It was really important too because it gave a sharpness to the guitar. It really gave a clarity.
Yeah.
So you want the warmth, but you also want the clarity. If you get the warmth but not the clarity, then you'll have the frequencies filled, but the song will sound like mud. And if you get the clarity but not the warmth, then
it'll sound thin and shallow and very bright, and the song will sound empty.
Like you recorded it on your iPhone. So yeah, let's go ahead and play that back just so you
guys. I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby.
Yeah, so I really feel like that specifically the way that we EQ'd it, did that. Changes that I made as far as guitar goes, I really think that I changed the way that the chorus was played just a little bit for the rhythm guitar part. If I solo the rhythm guitar part out here and play it back. Yeah, so I did change kind of the strumming pattern a little bit for the chorus. I think you kind of just strummed through the chorus, and I appreciated what you did, but I also think that one of the most important things with guitar, especially rhythm guitar, is rhythmic syncopation. And so I realized that the more complex you're making the strumming patterns, the muddier it is, the harder it's going to be to syncopate the bass, the lead guitar, and the rhythm guitar and all make them cohesive and sound like they're rhythmically doing the same thing and the attack of the notes coming at the exact same time, because the momentum of the song is dependent on that moment of just the wall of sound, and you lose that if you kind of hear everything coming in just slightly off sync. I did a little bit of palm muting with the chorus, so I just strummed the first chord and then and I think it really ended up sounding cool in the
and then you also
version.
did the little walk up there that I don't think was in the original version. You kind of walked up the chord to that second chord.
This little yeah, I think that ended up sounding cool in the final mix. I think that's about all that I changed as far as rhythm guitar goes. Towards the end of the bridge, you were kind of building up. It was a crescendo up into the final chorus. So I'm palm muting and I'm slowly letting go and strumming harder and harder. And then as I got towards the end, I just felt like the chord was building to be a little bit monotonous. So this may be a little more punk than what you guys are going for, but I just added some harmonics. So I just started kind of banging on a harmonic around the 5th fret. I think it's ended up sounding cool, so it sounds something like this. And then I also added, on the lead guitar bus, I added, going into the final chorus, just mute strumming, so, and I think that ended up sounding really cool going into the final chorus. I think for rhythm guitar, that's about all I did. I already told you guys about how I copy and pasted the little 6-tuplet piece to the end of the solo, but this solo made me want to rip my heart out and eat it. So thank you for that. So just for the sake of it, I'll play the solo back. So Noah and I had some conversations about specifically going directly from having his vocals right there to having the guitar in. And so we'll talk about this a little more in the post-production part of the video, but it was really important to me to boost the high end. So I ended up putting this high shelf on, just because when the lead guitar came in, you know, I wanted to compensate for the loss of that vocal in the mix, and I wanted it to sound as full as possible, so that was important. And I also used chorus on the guitar to really make it stand out in that way. So I'll show you guys what it sounded like with and without the chorus. Yeah, so just a little bit of chorus. I kept the rate really low because I didn't want it to be a heavy effect. I just wanted it to widen up the guitar a little bit and smooth it out, and I really feel like it did that. Other than that, I think most of the work was in post work. I think that's pretty much it for rhythm guitar and lead guitar. The bass guitar part was there for the track, but I think that frequency-wise it was really mixing in the original song. I think that was maybe a lot of the reason why it sounded kind of shallow. I think this lower frequency range here, maybe all the way up to 200, was just really, really missing. I don't know, you want to...
Yeah, I noticed that in the original mix. I didn't notice a whole lot of bass presence. And so we didn't really change much as far as composition or anything of the bass. It's pretty much what we could pick from the original song, but it's pretty straightforward all the way through. Just using a basic DI input to get the bass and to get a lot of those frequencies in there.
I will say with bass, one thing that you'll notice, this is something that I think is really subtle, but when I'm talking about syncopation, I very strategically kind of... I had to make a decision when I was recording the bass for the chorus, when I was doing those palm muting parts of the strumming pattern, like I was talking about, whether or not I wanted to mimic that on the bass, or I wanted to just, if I wanted to just let the chords ring out. And I decided I was going to kind of mimic the stopping and starting pattern here, as you can see, and then let the notes ring out for the second half of the repetition. And I think that ended up sounding pretty cool, so I just let you guys hear what that sounds like with the between the guitar and the bass. Yep, so I think that was a little anomaly, sorry, not anomaly, more like a nuance that ended up sounding really cool in the final mix. Alright, so we're moving on from guitar to synthesizers and just overall MIDI instruments, and I will kind of, starting with the 16 Dream sequencer, I'm gonna kind of allow Noah to just take over. I'll drive and...
Yeah, so this, I was ready, like, as soon as Chase finished getting the guitars done, I'm like, oh, awesome, I'm ready to mess with synths, because I'm really into the synth production. There's a synth, the synth that you guys used sounded very similar to this synth I've used quite a few times. So when I originally picked this sound, I liked it, but I'm like, wait a second, there's a little too much phase and other sound effects going on. So we turned down the phase and any other effects and kind of made it more raw, and then applied some of the reverb and delay and everything ourselves to get it back up to where we wanted it. We followed the same basic melody, didn't change anything there, but if you want to play back what we got for that synth. And right there, I made sure to apply chorus there as well because it fit with the chorus guitar. And it just kind of helped continue that the vibe of the guitars there.
Here's the verb that we ended up putting on that to make it have that little bit of spacey vibe. Then onto the Dominator. The Dominator was...
That's a really fat super saw synth, very distorted. I applied a little bit of glide to it. This is a default Logic preset. I added a little bit of a glide to it. And you can hear that it's supporting the lead guitar during that post-chorus, just to help it give a little bit of the synthetic pop vibe, but also allowing the guitar to stand in the front to keep the rock underneath it. Just a little enough to synthesize it, but not enough to take away from the rock.
Yeah, and I do remember specifically one thing that we had to, that we really had to screw with for a minute was this one note right here, because if
there was a pitch bend on the guitar.
Yeah, I did this little bit of bend on the lead guitar, and really trying to mimic that in MIDI was difficult, but we were able to do it with the glide function, and I think it ended up sounding pretty realistic in my book.
Yeah, and then finally on the Friday Night Star, another Logic preset, we just did an octave to support the rhythm guitar, again, just enough to really beef up the frequencies and synthesize it just enough so it's a little more poppy, but again, we didn't want to put it too much in the foreground to take away from the original song. Just some basic super saw octaves, you can hear it along with the guitar. But all around, with the synthesizers, we didn't want to do a whole lot to really make it a very synthetic pop song. We wanted to allow the rock to stand in the foreground of the song, but the synths just added that little extra element to pop the song up and make it a little more our style, mostly just stuff that we would do in our songs. So the super saws underneath the guitar is something we've been really getting into when it comes to this pop rock.
Yeah, and if you guys notice, this is something you're going to see. I just want to compare these EQs here for a second, because this is something you're going to see in synthesized rock that you got that you listen to a lot. And I don't know if you guys ever listen to Bring Me the Horizon, Family Force 5. These types of bands have a very, very raw rock, but also synthesized rock type of sound. And that comes from, I think, really pairing the super saw synth with the rhythm guitar. So we noticed specifically in the chorus there wasn't really much of a lead part, or if there was, I think it was just a couple notes that we didn't end up bringing over. Not that they weren't important, but if you notice here, we had kind of cut the high end, but if I play it back, even if I remove this this high cut, there's not really much of the rhythm guitar showing up in the 5 to 10K range. It pretty much drops off right here, as you can see from the analyzer. And so pairing it up with the super saw synth really saturated it, and it allowed us to boost this 5 to 10K range, which has sharpened up the whole entire sound as a whole, and really created that wall of sound, and that's the reason it sounds a little bit more raw in the verse, and then as soon as the chorus comes in, it just drops with this wall of sound.
Yeah, you notice that they're EQ'd very, very similarly. The high cut cuts out a lot of the sharpness, so it fits in with the electric guitar. The low end is cut out in the same frequency range to keep the mud out of it. And like you said, just raising it right in that 5 to 10K area allows it to hit frequencies that rhythm guitar wouldn't have hit otherwise, which just sharpens it all up and fattens up the mix in general.
And that doesn't mean necessarily for you as a producer. Maybe you're recording with a different type of guitar. Maybe you've got single coil pickups. Maybe you've got a different effects chain that you're running it through, or an amp head that you're running it through that it's showing up in different frequency ranges. You can still use this method. Just throw a super saw on top of it and that fills a wide range of frequencies, and then apply high and low cut and really just zone it in and beef it up wherever your guitar seems to be lacking, so that they're complementary to each other. And with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to post-production, the fun part of the game.
Coast Malone.
So, we all love Post Malone over here, right? We're all big Posty fans, and anyone that knows anything about Post Malone, it's that you can accredit all of his success to his post-production work. It's in the name, is it not? I mean, it's exactly, it's in the name.
I don't know, he's a pretty good vocalist.
Even before the auto-tune.
That's right, we were flipping a song. So back to that, post work. So I'm just going to kind of go through bit by bit and describe what we were working with here, and I'll turn it over to Noah at times. So with the drum kit, I think we already described how we had EQ'd each individual drum. I think most of this we made some small edits, but most of this compression is default to the kit, is it not?
Yeah, most of it's on there by default. We just tweaked it a little bit to add a little more punch to the drums. As you can see, I usually always set the makeup gain on the compressor to 0 dB, and then the auto gain I'll change depending on the instrument and how much I want it to punch. Overheads were turned up just a little bit to shine the crash and ride cymbals just a little bit more.
Right, and then of course you put an ad limiter at the end of the chain for those, just to keep them from flipping.
If you don't know what the adaptive limiter does, is it kind of allows you to set an output ceiling so that nothing goes over that ceiling, but also allows you to push the loudness of the track without actually changing the dB output. That's a whole other video, loudness versus dB rating, but it allows you to make it sound louder without actually being louder with volume.
So
Let's start off with the first vocal track. So if you open up the EQ, Chase, my vocal chain is something I've worked on for years to really get it to where the vocals sound good in the mix. But usually, for me personally, the vocals punch a lot in the 500 to 1K area, usually closer to the 1K area. There's a lot of punch, so I reduce there. And then in the 2K to 5K, depending on how loud and how high I'm singing, I'll increase the 2K to 5K area somewhere, just to brighten up the vocal and let it cut through the mix just a little bit. And then again with the compressor, it's the same ordeal. Just setting the makeup gain to 0, and the auto gain, I also set that to 0, and then just compressed a little more with the ratio and threshold. Yeah, one tip that I recommend when recording vocals is record low, and then use compression and limiters to get the actual volume louder. That way you don't have any clipping and any distortion in the track itself. You can get the volume up afterwards. We use X for OTT, or is it OTT? I have no clue. I've heard it referred to both ways. But we usually keep the depth pretty low, because otherwise it gets very bright and tinny if we keep the depth any higher. I kept the high end I kept it balanced halfway at 50%. Turn up the mids to really saturate the mid-range and the lows as well. I know I cut a lot of the low frequencies out with the EQ, but I brought some of the lower tones back with the saturation just to really make it warmer without being muddy.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, I like to think of it as like double buckshot, you know what I mean?
And then I used a multiband compressor to compress the high end. If you actually solo the track and play it, you can see the multiband compressor in action there. If you open it up.
People like to talk too much, but do they ever listen, though?
You see a lot of the
To voices outside of their own brain, disdain, causing separation pains.
On the high end, and a little bit in
I think
the
I'm
third
losing
band,
touch.
but it's mostly just to
The introvert
keep the
in me
individual
is growing
frequencies
up.
control, especially the high
It's
end.
taking control, running away.
The rest of the vocal tracks were pretty much the same, some minor changes in volume and EQ, just to get certain harmonies to be less sharp and not overcrowd and overpower the lead vocal. And you can also see in this track, if you open up the pitch shift, this is one little trick that I've learned, is you see the mix is set to about 16%, and I set the sense to 1 and the semitone to 0, so it's not actually adjusting the pitch, but with the pitch shifter it gives a little bit of a delay, and so I put the mix at about 16 to 25% somewhere, and it just gives a little bit of a doubled vocal effect, just to give extra stereo spread and just extra depth to the vocal mix.
Which I really like to point out, doubling is mega important in production, like in vocal production, because even at this negative 10 dB, you can see that we have set for his double. If I just play this back with the double.
Lonely, sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only
You can just hear
knew, and baby,
how
if
much
only.
wider that sounds with the double there.
So just really double up your vocals, guys. It makes a huge difference.
So most of the vocal tracks were the same, and then if you go back up to the bus itself, you can see I just added a noise gate to keep some background noise out. If you don't know what a noise gate is, it literally just sets a threshold to where it'll start cutting out stuff in the background. So anything below this certain dB, it'll cut stuff out. You can change the attack and release to change how fast it's going to cut in and out. But that's pretty much what it does. It cuts background noise out when you're not actually singing. I compressed everything again just to get it a little louder. You can see the threshold is much lower and the ratio is much lower, so it's not actually compressing quite as much as it is increasing the volume. But just a little bit more volume push to get it to cut through the mix. Finally, threw some reverb over the entire vocal chain just to give it some space and let it stand out in the mix just a little bit and give it some flavor. And finally, one more time, limited it just to get a little more push in volume and make it a little louder in the mix.
If you ever saw that movie Limitless, that's not what we're about. We are the limited. Like limited edition, that's what it is. It's limited edition.
And then Chase's vocal chain was just about the same. I think he pretty much copied my vocal chain and tweaked a couple things. If you go down to the OG guitar, actually, it'll actually show the original production before we bounced it. Again, bringing out the EQ, like I said before, pushing in that 200 to 500 range, just to get a little bit of the warmth, and right around the 5K range, just to get it to be brightened up. We compressed it again. As it is a more forefront instrument, we did compress it to both the makeup gain and auto gain at 0 dB to really get it up to volume. The threshold at negative 20, and the ratio isn't super high, so it's not over compressed, especially since through guitar rig it was already compressed in the amps and heads.
Mm-hmm, right. And then as well,
this is one of our secret ingredients. Sample delay. Basically, it delays the track in one ear, or both ears, however you set it, and it just gives it a little bit of stereo depth, so that it sounds more wide in your mix. It doesn't sound very mono and straight in the center of your mix and in your speakers.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and show you what it looks like with and without the sample delay.
This is with, without, with, again without, and then with again. So you can really just see that
It adds some space to it. It pans. It doesn't pan necessarily, but it goes a little bit left and right, because you're hearing one side a little bit faster than you're hearing the other. It's kind of a mental trick, because what it does is it really opens up the center for other things to be placed in the center of the mix. That way, you don't have everything fighting for the center of your mix. But I will also note that I did, other than just applying sample delay, I did pan my rhythm guitar 10 dB left, and then I panned my lead guitar. Oh, sorry, this is just the bus. I panned the lead guitar 17 dB right, because prior to doing that, I was just losing a lot of clarity on the lead guitar, especially since they're both recorded with the same guitar, same pickups, and so they were hitting similar frequency ranges that were just really hard to pick out. Being lead guitar, it was really important that we be able to hear both of those, so that helped a lot.
Yeah, moral of the story is panning helps a lot. You don't want I never pan all the way one way or the other. Just little bits of pans in different directions helps widen up that mix and make it sound a lot less mono.
You guys ever listen to the band Pantera? What was their key
Panic at the
success?
Disco?
Panic at the Disco. Pantomimes, their story too, man. It's audio panning, you know?
But then on to the lead guitar. There's a lot going on. We'll start with the actual lead guitar, like the root track, the original track of the lead guitar. It's going to be down below.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the OG track. So we EQ'd it here. As you can see, it is a little bit above, the warm tones are coming a little bit above the rhythm guitar, and we do have the clarity tone, as I would call it, up more towards the 5K range than the rhythm guitar sat, but as I said before, they are overlapping a lot of frequencies just because I recorded them with the same guitar, same pickup, same everything.
Which is again why he panned.
Right, exactly why I panned. The only thing that might have been different was I used different. Actually, I don't even think this is a conglomerate of all the different lead recordings I did. But if you actually listen to the lead guitar track, hold up. If I solo this, you can tell I'm using a completely different amp head and effect chain here that I'm using on the solo over here. So, this is all common ground, but
the general production stayed the same. There was nothing on the root track or not much else on the root track other than same compressor, sample delay again, and the adaptive limiter. And then onto the actual lead guitar bus. There's nothing on the track inside the bus. We EQ'd it to brighten up again, he showed you that originally. We put that high shelf on there, really brighten up that mix and let it take place of the vocal when the vocal cuts out. And we noticed that was done really well, is that the lead guitar never really came in when there was vocals other than in the verses. So anytime there was a legitimate lead guitar melody, the vocal wasn't there to distract from it.
So we weren't really worried about frequency overlap there.
Yeah, that was done really well compositionally, made it a lot easier for post-production. Mm-hmm. Then again, we compressed it, add the sample delay. We do that with pretty much every guitar and a lot of other instruments that we mix.
Sample delay is the greatest thing ever known to mankind, other than the infamous Kung Pao.
Kung Pao.
Kung Pao.
If you haven't seen that movie, watch it on YouTube.
Steve Odekirk, reach out to me, sponsor me. I love you. All right, so. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up.
Then again, he showed you the chorus initially. He just added a little bit of chorus to it. I think it really gave it like an 80s guitar solo kind of vibe on there.
Yes, I think
along with the reverb too.
That's really what he more towards this solo section, but I believe in the original. If we go back and look, hold on, let me pull it up. Solo section around here. Very, very chorus guitar feel. And that's so 80s, so I was kind of trying to go for that. As I said, one of the things is that the guitar was very forefront in the original mix, and it was overpowering a lot of stuff. So we did compress everything else in the mix so that, you can hear the drums, you can hear the vocals a little bit more, everything's more forefront. But it does make it a little bit tougher to get all those frequency ranges in the guitar that really made it shine through. So this is one of those areas that guitar, it's really hard to mix in that fashion. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, especially since guitar, in rock, guitar is all distortion. So mixing distortion gets a lot more complicated. But we managed to pull it off with a little bit of work. But from there, it was just, again, reverb to add some space to the guitar. And then finally the adaptive limiter just to keep it, again, from clipping and get a little extra volume boost. And then onto the bass. Go to the OG bass track.
Yep, here we go.
We pulled out guitar rig, and he can actually show you inside a guitar rig here.
Yeah, so this is what we used, and I'll go ahead and run through, since this is the only track we still have guitar rig left on, but the amp head that we used for the rhythm was called All of the Blink Things. Hold up. All the Blink Things here. Start my demo packet. I don't think we really made any adjustments to this amp head.
Nope.
We used, for the lead guitar, we used Almost Clean in the first pre-chorus, and then we ended up turning on the overdrive channel and bringing the overdrive back a ton.
We turned down the bass so it wasn't as warm.
Because it's a lead part, and then we boosted the treble. Actually, I think
that was pretty much all we changed.
Yeah, we cranked the treble, that was about it. And then I ended up using...
Just the DI bass, I believe, on the bass.
Yeah, I used the DI bass on bass. Sorry, I think there's a hyphen. Yes. So we used this amp head, and then probably boosted the treble a little bit. And then I think for lead guitar on the solo, hot solo. I think that's hot solo scooped is what I used. Yep, that's right. And I just cranked the treble.
The bass, you can see, like we mentioned before, we did cut the frequencies out for the snare and the kick to cut through, but we did a general low shelf on it to get that low end to really, really push and fatten up the mix there. We just basically referenced where exactly, with the analyzer, we analyzed where the kick and the snare were coming through with a punch, and we just cut out there. We cut the high end out just to keep it from taking up the room in the mix for the high end stuff, like the vocals, the high end of the snare, crash, hi-hat, stuff like that. And then again, you can see we've pretty much put compression on absolutely everything in this entire mix, pushing it up to 0 dB. Other than the makeup gain, I brought it down just 1 dB because it was a little loud, and then finally limited it so it doesn't clip.
Onto...
we have the riser that we used. We used Soberizer Classic White Noise. It's a sample from Splice. We pretty much use this on any riser, just white noise riser that we use. It's the same sample pretty much every time. And then there was the point right after the chorus into the post-chorus where we had the impact hit kind of came in and had the fade out and fade back in on the frequency range. I had a sample pack that I downloaded forever ago when I was getting into producing NF tracks. For a long while I was producing NF type beats, and I used one of those, and I really liked how it sounded. But as you can see down on the stereo out track, I did a high cut, cutting down, cut a lot of those high frequencies out.
Automated. And
quickly scooping it back in, just to give that everything in the whole mix is coming out and coming right back in. Gives that, again, that wall of sound coming right back in with that lead guitar, fattens up the mix and gets you going all over again.
And as you can see, that kind of coincides with the dip and then sudden increase of gain in these white noise risers. That kind of, it all coincided together to kind of recreate that effect that you guys had. That was, seriously, props on that. That was one of the coolest parts of the song.
It was very creative.
Yeah, very cool.
And then now into that 16 millimeter dream sequence. We started off by cutting out a lot of the low end. It was a very warm synth by default, and I think that it should have been a little more bright. So I cut out pretty much everything below the 200 and just really increased the 2K plus with a high shelf and brightened it up. Cut through the mix a little more clear.
Yep, we really got high with this one. You guys ever hear the Afro Man song?
And as you can see, compressed it, and then yet again use that sample delay just to help it pop through the mix even more.
Yep, it looks like we actually used a little bit more sample delay on this than anything.
And then, again, like I said, threw chorus on there, just to work well with the chorus on the guitar. Mm-hmm. Tremolo to kind of give it, well, I don't even remember what I was doing with the tremolo, but it's
I don't know if we actually added the tremolo. I think it's
0% wet, so it's all dry.
I think it's one of them deals where it's a suggestion by Apple, where Logic Pro, as soon as you open up the preset, it's in your effect chain.
But then silver verb just to give it some atmosphere in the background. Clip distortion, just a little bit of grittiness on top of it, just to give it some more flavor. And then limited it so it does not clip.
As you guys can see, this is the Blue Rose of Destiny. That's how you know you have a really, really good distortion.
Okay, then on to the Dominator.
Okay. Dominator. Sorry. Here we go.
Compressed it right off the bat, just to set the tone for it.
Looks like we really cranked the ratio on this one.
So it has a lot more compression, but its threshold is a little lower.
Right. So then we got
EQ'd. I cut a lot of the low end out, again, to leave room for that bass, especially since this saw synth is very wide across the frequency spectrum, pretty much from the bottom to the top. It's covering the whole range. A little bit of the mid-highs in the 1K to 2K area to brighten it up, but then to really make it shine, the 5K to 10K area, just like we showed you with the lead guitar earlier, we did the same thing here with the Dominator. And then just some reverb to give it a little bit of atmosphere. and a limiter, basic limiter, just to keep it from clipping.
On to the Friday Night Star.
A little bit of chorus, again, to work with the
Lead guitar, sorry.
Compression, as always, setting it to 0 dB. Had a limiter on there, keep it from clipping, and a random EQ to boost the high end and make it shine. Really, the EQ should be before the limiter, but it's how it's laid right now, so it's not the end of the world.
Alright.
And then from there, we can actually get to the master. On the master, I usually always start with a basic compressor. I keep the threshold at 0 dB, obviously because we don't want the mix to go above 0 dB. A little bit of ratio to keep it from compressing, or too much, but we do in a little bit of compression to catch any excessive frequencies and excessive punches in the mix. Set the makeup gain to 0 dB, auto gain to 0 dB, that way the mix is at 0 decibels as far as volume goes. Channel EQ, I gave a little bit of a low cut on the low end, just getting rid of the little bit of mud on the low end. Frequencies are almost inaudible to the human ear.
Yeah, puddle of mud. Get your act together.
1.5 dB increase on the high end starting at the 1K area. Just gives a little shine to the mix. And cut out a little bit of the high end right around the 20K area, which, to be honest, above 20K is almost inaudible.
The multipressor is
Multi-band compressor. This livens up the mix a lot. I like pushing the low frequencies, but again, I'm compressing everything, so it's not a huge increase since it is compressing at the same time. The mid-range, I keep a little lower. High end, I really push, and then that really high end, just a little bit of push. Again, still compressing all of these to keep it from pushing way too much and overdoing it. And then I use a stereo spread, just so in the high end, what this does is it kind of pans the different frequency ranges between your ear, left and right. This just widens up the mix just a little bit. Then adaptive limiter, just to keep it from clipping. And then I use this level meter just to check my actual decibel rating versus my loudness rating. So if Chase plays a track here, we can kind of see.
Lonely, sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, and baby, if only you knew I tend to get lonely. Sometimes
you can see it's not going above 0 decibels ever in the actual peak volume. This is the decibel rating. And then it's not going above too much above 10 with the actual RMS. What RMS is it's the loudness rating. So with a typical full band song, I don't go too much above 10 dB in the loudness rating. If it's like an acoustic guitar, I'll be somewhere around -15 as far as the RMS. So it doesn't sound like it's as loud as a full band. It's all, again, like I said, a whole nother video for the peak volume versus RMS rating, because you can have a song hitting 0 dB but sound very, very quiet. Whole nother video to explain volume versus loudness. But that pretty much covers the entire mix and master process of this entire song.
people like to talk too much, but do they ever listen, though? To voices outside of their own brain, disdain causing separation pains. I think I'm losing touch. The introvert in me is growing up. It's taking control, running away. Mayday, we're crashing into the bay. I'm tired of Arctic lies. I promise I'm not fine. I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, and baby, if only you knew, I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew.
I like to stay inside. My agoraphobia's in full fight. Thinking you'll betray me, berate me. Maybe you'll find a way to hurt me. I don't like the way you look into my eyes, so I'd rather be alone than be untainted in a paper hole.
I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, and baby, if only you knew, I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew. I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew. I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew. I tend to get lonely. Sometimes I tend to get lonely. Sometimes, and baby, if only you knew, yeah, baby, if only you knew.
If you guys have a song that you guys are working on, anybody out there watching this video, if you're a producer, you're writing music, send your video to us, or your song to us rather, at theproducerbros@gmail.com, and we will flip your song, start from the ground up, just like we did this song, make our own rendition, our own cover of it, show you what we would have done differently and what we could potentially do to make it a little better. Again, Cameron and the rest of the band, we don't want to say that the song was bad. We love the bones of the song. We just thought the mixing and mastering needed a little bit of work. Love the song. Phenomenal composition, phenomenal songwriting, great talent. But anybody else out there who's listening and watching, if you want to submit a song, like I said, theproducerbros@gmail.com. We'll do the same thing for your song.
Yep, and I would like to add, just like he said, on to Noah's thing, with it, we really, really like the song. That's why we wanted to quote-unquote flip it. There are a lot of nuances that you guys had in your performance that we're not exactly going to match. It's not really our song, so we're not really worried about, did we get the passion in the vocals? Like, we didn't, we weren't really worried about the performance aspect of it as much, because it's not our song. It's your guys' song. It's your guys' bread and butter. And you did a really good job of that aspect of it. We really just wanted to bring in the big guns with as far as production go, and some of these secrets that we've got in our arsenal from years of production, and just show you guys how it could really make a difference in the overall outcome of how your song sounds. And so with that, I think we would like to bid you adieu, and keep it real.
See you next time
On
The Producer Bros.
I thought this was the Gilmore Girls.